Mindset discipline. 9 powerful ways to cultivate extreme self-discipline. Introduction. The line you refuse to cross. There's a line in your mind. You see it every day. You know exactly where it is. It's the place where you always stop, the invisible fence you've built inside yourself, carefully, over time, with excuses, with comfort, with hesitation. That line separates who you are from who you could be, and you know it. Somewhere in your gut, you feel the burn of it, the sting of waking up each morning and realizing you're still standing on the same side of that line, still circling around your potential like it's a museum exhibit, safe behind glass. But here's the truth. Discipline is the sledgehammer that breaks the glass. Not motivation, not inspiration, not some feel-good meme you saw on social media. Discipline. Cold, hard, consistent, ruthless when necessary, compassionate when needed, but always there, rain or shine, happy or sad, ready or not. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It just gets to work. People ask, how do I stay consistent? How do I get focused? How do I build habits? The better question is, are you willing to make a decision and not negotiate with it every morning? That's what this audiobook is about. Not theory, not fluff, not pseudo-scientific hacks or morning routines designed to give you a dopamine hit. This is about creating internal order, the kind that doesn't fold when life punches you in the teeth. This is about building a spine of steel beneath your daily choices. This is about mental warcraft. You don't need motivation. You need standards. You don't need to feel ready. You need to be real with yourself. You don't need another plan. You need execution, repetition, discipline. You're here because you know it's time. Time to stop lying to yourself. Time to cross the damn line. Because on the other side is the version of you that never needed permission. The version that wakes up and acts. No matter the weather, the mood, the outside noise. That version of you isn't fearless. They've just stopped worshipping fear. If you want change, get ready to pay in sweat. If you want clarity, stop entertaining chaos. If you want discipline, understand this. It is not built in comfort. It is forged in resistance. This audiobook isn't going to hold your hand. It's going to hand you the mirror. You're going to meet the part of yourself that's been hiding, waiting for you to get serious. And when you do, that's when everything changes. Because once you've crossed that line, you don't go back. This is the beginning of war, not against the world, but against the lesser version of yourself. The version that procrastinates, makes excuses, blames the circumstances. The version that chooses ease. No more. It's time to become dangerous in your discipline, ruthless in your standards, relentless in your pursuit, and clear, crystal clear, about who you are and where you're going. No apologies, no justifications, just action. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Burn the Plan B. Here's the first truth you need to swallow. As long as you have a Plan B, you will never give everything to Plan A. Read that again. Every time you give yourself a back door, a cushion to land on, a just in case, you weaken your resolve. You tell your brain, it's okay to fall short. We've got something to catch us. And your brain believes it. It listens. It softens. But discipline thrives in commitment. It sharpens when you close all doors but one. Burning the bridge behind you isn't reckless. It's clarity. It's a commitment signal to your soul. No more running. No more seeing how it goes. From here on out, it's forward or nothing. Think of the people you admire, the legends, the ones who seem to move with this unshakable presence. Do you think they succeeded because they were lucky? Because they were more talented? No, they succeeded because they decided to commit when no one else would. They bet everything on themselves and refused to turn around. They didn't dabble. They didn't try their best. They went to war for what they wanted. And most of them, they didn't have a safety net. That was the point. Burning Plan B forces your brain to operate differently. It cuts off negotiation. It silences the voice that says, well, maybe we don't have to push today. Maybe we can chill out. Maybe we can take the easy path. You know that voice. You've obeyed it more times than you can count. It has stolen months, years, dreams, and the worst part, it disguises itself as reason. It wears the costume of balance. It whispers lies wrapped in self-care slogans. But behind it all is one cold fact. It wants you small, and your discipline is the only weapon that can shut it up. This isn't about hustle porn or burning out or working 18 hours a day until your body breaks. That's not discipline. That's desperation dressed in insecurity. Real discipline is different. It's precise. It's surgical. It's efficient. It's the voice in your head that says, we do what we said we would do, even when we don't feel like it. And that voice gets louder, only when the noise of your excuses fades. So here's your first mission. Make a decision so strong, there's no going back. Delete the backup plan. Quit the emotional bargaining. Close the tab. Burn the list of contingencies. Make the leap and seal the doors behind you. Will it be uncomfortable? Of course. Will people call you reckless? Probably. But those people are operating from fear, and fear is contagious. So is courage. The world doesn't need another lukewarm maybe. It needs people on fire with purpose. People who have scorched the bridges behind them and are sprinting toward what they want like their life depends on it. Because in a way it does. You can't half love your potential. You either commit to it, or you let it rot. Every day you hesitate, someone else is moving. Every minute you overthink, someone else is executing. Every hour you distract yourself, someone else is putting in the reps. Discipline doesn't wait for you to be ready. It demands you show up regardless. And when you do, consistently, silently, relentlessly, that's when you win. Not overnight, not with a miracle, but through the dull, sharp ache of repetition. Burn the plan B. You don't need it anymore. You've decided. And now we begin for real. Discipline doesn't arrive like a revelation. It shows up in quiet moments when no one is watching and no one is clapping. It's the decision you make when the dopamine is gone, when the initial hype has faded, and all that's left is you, your task, and your resistance. And that resistance is loud. It's going to sound like logic. You've worked hard today. You deserve to relax. It's going to sound like self-compassion. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's going to sound like wisdom. Maybe now just isn't the right time. But you know better. You know the difference between wisdom and fear pretending to be smart. Every time you listen to that voice, that familiar whisper urging you to shrink, you feed the wrong wolf. You reinforce the version of you that taps out when things get real. The version that turns potential into wasted years. But the good news is this: discipline is a choice, not a trait. It's not reserved for the elite. It's not only for the naturally motivated. It's available to anyone who decides, I'm tired of watching my own life from the sidelines. That's what happens when you burn the plan B. You shift your identity. You stop playing not to lose and start playing to win. Not recklessly, but with everything you've got. See, plan B isn't just an alternate path. It's a leash. It tugs at you when the pressure rises. It gives you an easy out when your commitment gets tested. But when there's no other way but through, you evolve. You stop asking, what if this doesn't work? And you start asking, what needs to happen to make it work? You go from consumer to creator, from daydreamer to producer, from potential to power. And power doesn't come from fantasy. It comes from showing up over and over and over again, past the boredom, past the fatigue, past the noise in your head that tells you you're not cut out for it. Want to know what separates the disciplined from the dabblers? Standards. The disciplined don't need a mood. They don't need music. They don't need their coffee to be just right. They do it because they said they would. Period. That's the standard. Not perfect, just non-negotiable. And once you decide to live like that, really live like that, you start moving different. Your energy changes. People notice, they can feel the shift, and some won't like it, because you'll remind them of their excuses. But that's not your problem. Your job is not to fit in. Your job is to build something unshakable. So the next time resistance shows up, in the form of fatigue, distraction, procrastination, remind yourself, this is where most people stop. But you don't stop here. You go further. You go deeper. You put your head down and work, not because it's glamorous, but because it's yours. Your mission, your life, your standard. So do it when it's boring. Do it when you're tired. Do it when no one's clapping. Do it when your old self begs you to quit. Especially then, because that's the difference between people who almost change their lives and those who actually do. You've burned the plan B. Now build the discipline that makes it worth it. There comes a moment, not loud, not flashy, where something inside you just clicks. A quiet rebellion. You look around at the mess of half-started plans, abandoned habits, to-do lists you never touched. You hear the echo of promises you made to yourself, broken, again, and you feel it. That heavy, silent disgust. That's the moment. The exact second when people either retreat into denial or stand up and say, never again. That moment matters more than all the books you've read, the vision boards you've made, the coaching you've paid for, because it's real. It's raw. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with a line in the sand. You either step over it or stay who you are. Most people won't cross it. They'll flirt with greatness, date ambition, but never marry it. Why? Because committing means killing off every excuse. And excuses are warm. They're comforting. They give you a scapegoat when the results don't come. But you're here because you're done with excuses. You're not here to feel better. You're here to become better. There's a cost to transformation. Discipline is the currency. It's not sexy. It's not always inspiring. Sometimes it feels like a grind, because it is. But inside that grind is freedom. Real freedom. The kind that's earned, not gifted. Here's what nobody tells you: freedom isn't the absence of discipline, it's the result of it. You want more time. Be disciplined with your hours. You want more peace. Be disciplined with your mind. You want more money. Be disciplined with your work. You want respect. Be disciplined with your word. You don't get to have power without responsibility. You don't get to lead if you can't follow through. And you damn sure don't get to chase a dream while living like it's optional. If you're serious about growth, about real, permanent, undeniable transformation, then you've got to be willing to hold yourself to a standard that makes the old you uncomfortable. The old you, they loved shortcuts. They loved plan Bs and back doors. They lived for weekends and slept through purpose. That version of you is going to fight for its life as you rise. Expect that. It's part of the process. The part where the voice in your head starts negotiating. Let's skip today. Let's go easy. Let's start again Monday. That's the death rattle of your old self. Don't listen. Respond with action. Always action. Every ignored urge to quit is a signal to your subconscious. We are not that person anymore. Every finished task, no matter how small, is a brick in your new identity. Every day you show up when it would have been easier not to, you earn compound interest on your future. You may not see the payoff today, but that doesn't mean it isn't working. Discipline works in silence. Growth happens behind closed doors, and results show up long after the effort was made. But when they come, they hit different, because you'll know you earned them. So no more back doors, no more mental bargaining. You've burned Plan B. There's no second option, no detour. You're building yourself in the fire now, and fire either forges steel, or it reveals what was never strong to begin with. You decide which it'll be. Let's get brutally honest. If you're still keeping a Plan B, you don't believe in your Plan A. And if you don't believe in it, why should anyone else? People can feel the difference between someone who's trying and someone who's committed. There's a frequency to conviction. It's in your posture, your tone, your consistency. The world may not say it out loud, but it's always watching, always testing. Do you really mean it, or are you bluffing? Discipline is how you answer, not with words, with presence, with weight, with an unspoken message that says, this isn't optional, this is who I am. You don't have to scream about it. You don't have to prove it. You just become it. And when you do, the world adjusts. Doors open. People show up. Opportunities multiply, not because of magic, but because people, deep down, trust consistency. They lean toward clarity. They're drawn to the calm power of someone who has decided. That's what burning Plan B gives you, an identity anchored in certainty. The truth is, most people live in mental purgatory, half in, half out. They start projects, then pivot the second things get uncomfortable. They commit to goals, then renegotiate the second resistance shows up. They speak in vague maybes. I'm thinking about it. I might try that. Their language gives them away. But you're not most people. You didn't come this far to flirt with potential. You're here to lock in, to build something that lasts, not just a temporary fix, but a permanent shift. That shift begins the second you stop entertaining the escape route. Burning Plan B isn't reckless. It's strategic. It forces your brain to consolidate energy, to focus, to adapt. Because when there's only one road, the only option is forward. Suddenly, all the mental bandwidth that was once used for weighing options, managing doubt, and entertaining excuses, it's freed up. Now you can channel it into momentum. That's when things get dangerous. That's when you become unstoppable, because you're no longer playing the mental game of what if. You're playing the real game. What now? What now do I need to execute? What now is the next move? What now can I do, even when it's hard, boring, or uncertain? The moment you start asking the right questions, the quality of your life shifts. Don't wait for external confirmation. Don't wait for applause. Don't wait for perfect timing. That's the old you talking. The new you doesn't wait. The new you wakes up and moves with purpose. You work even when your motivation is zero. You follow through, even when no one's checking. You don't explain. You dull-spend. You deliver. And that delivery builds proof. Proof rewires your belief. Belief fuels your actions. Actions compound into identity. And identity is the real game, because once you identify as someone who doesn't back down, who doesn't entertain second options, who gets it done no matter what, you don't need tricks or hacks. You just move. That's the energy we're building here. This isn't about hype. This is about self-respect. This is about personal sovereignty. This is about mastering the only thing you can truly control, yourself. Plan B is gone, burned, dead. All that's left is the road ahead, and you finally becoming who you were meant to be. You will never rise while you're still giving yourself options to fail. Let that sink in. That part of you, the one that creates clever backup plans, builds soft landings, and always leaves a crack in the door, just in case, that part is not your ally. It's your leash. It's dressed up like wisdom, but it's fear wearing a mask. Fear of responsibility, fear of failure, fear of truly becoming the version of yourself that doesn't hide anymore. Because here's the thing, when there's no plan B, there's no one left to blame. You can't point to circumstances. You can't lean on fallback excuses. You can't pretend the stakes weren't real. It's you. It's always been you. That's where true power lives. In the harsh clarity of self-responsibility. In the unshakable center that forms when you stop asking the world to give you direction and start issuing your own. Most people avoid this truth their entire lives. They bury themselves in distractions. They chase the next shiny strategy, the next guru, the next trend. Anything to avoid facing the raw fact that the only thing standing between where they are and where they want to be is their discipline. And discipline starts with elimination. Eliminating distraction. Eliminating negotiation. Eliminating plan B. That's the foundation. It's not the sexy part, but it's the real part. Because once you eliminate escape, something strange happens. You begin to hear your real voice, the one buried under the noise. It doesn't yell. It doesn't panic. It speaks with calm urgency. This is the way. Don't stop. That voice has been waiting for you to get serious, waiting for you to stop flirting with potential and start fighting for your evolution. Now it's your move. No more maybe someday. No more vague intentions. No more half-hearted commitments. From here on out, everything changes. You show up for your life like it's your only shot, because it is. You train your mind to respect the commitments you make to yourself. You kill the version of you that keeps settling. You bury the plan B mentality once and for all, and in its place, a machine, a force, a presence so dialed in that nothing external can sway it. You will become a person people look at and say, how do they do it? How do they keep showing up like that? And you'll smile. Not because it's easy, but because you know the secret. You burned the bridge. You made the decision. You closed the door. You committed like your life depended on it. And now you're free. Not free from struggle. Not free from hard days. But free from the noise. Free from the weakness. Free from the inner war that comes with indecision. This is what discipline looks like. No plan B. No turning back. No mercy for the old you. Only forward. Only fire. Chapter 2. Consistency is your edge. Consistency isn't glamorous. It's not loud. It doesn't draw a crowd. That's why most people underestimate it until they get run over by someone who's mastered it. You see, we're raised in a world obsessed with speed, quick wins, viral moments, instant success. But what you eventually learn, usually the hard way, is that nothing meaningful sticks without consistency. Because discipline without consistency is like a lion without teeth, all roar, no bite. Consistency is your edge in a world addicted to novelty. Anyone can be disciplined once. Anyone can crush it for a week, a month, even a year, but very few can show up on the days when the reward is invisible, the praise is absent, and the progress feels microscopic. That's the separation point. That's where the edge lives. Most people quit, not because they're incapable, but because they can't handle the silence, the long, dry stretches between action and outcome. The disciplined ones, they keep moving through the silence like it's part of the soundtrack, because it is. Here's the hard truth. It's not about how good you are when you're on fire, it's about how you perform when the flame dies down. Consistency is doing the thing long after the novelty has worn off. It's sticking to your word when your mood has changed. It's committing to the process when the results still haven't shown up. It's not sexy, but it's the soil where everything grows. If discipline is the seed, consistency is the water. You don't need to reinvent yourself every Monday. You don't need to wait for inspiration to strike. You don't need to keep chasing the next shiny strategy. You need to pick your path and show up to it relentlessly, even when you're tired. Especially when you're tired. Because tired is the test. Tired is where character lives. It's where most people make excuses. It's where momentum dies for the average person and multiplies for the disciplined one. And here's the irony. The more consistent you are, the less effort it eventually takes. What once felt impossible becomes automatic. What once required force becomes flow. But you don't get to that point without first passing through resistance. It's a rite of passage, and most people don't make it through. They sabotage their progress because they're addicted to stimulation. They think boredom is a sign they're doing something wrong. No, boredom is a sign you're doing it right. Consistency will bore your ego before it builds your empire. Let it, because your ego is the part of you that craves attention, applause, immediate gratification. The disciplined version of you doesn't flinch when none of that shows up. They just keep showing up. Every rep compounds, every page written, every cold call made, every workout completed, every difficult conversation initiated. It all stacks up, quietly, relentlessly, until one day your results arrive not as a breakthrough, but as a confirmation, a reflection of who you've become. The consistent ones don't hope. They prove. They don't pray for luck. They practice to win. That's your edge now. You don't have to be the smartest, the fastest, or the loudest, just the one who never stopped showing up. Let's be clear, consistency isn't a skill. It's a decision. It's not something you're born with. It's not built from motivation or genetics. It's built from resolve, grit, a no matter what mentality that kicks in when conditions aren't perfect, because they rarely are. You think the top 1% of performers feel like doing the hard thing every day. No, they feel resistance just like you do. The only difference is they don't negotiate with it. They don't ask how they feel. They don't hold meetings with their emotions. They get up, they lock in, and they execute. Not because they're robots, but because they've trained their mind to obey their goals, not their moods. That's the inner shift you need to make. The world won't reward your intentions. It will only respond to your follow-through. You might have big dreams, incredible plans, even raw talent, but if you can't string together consistent execution over time, all of that stays potential, nothing more. Because here's the truth, nobody sees your almosts. Nobody claps for the work you planned to do. Nobody rewards the promises you made, but didn't keep. The world responds to what you deliver, and delivery is the child of consistency. You want more impact, more income, more respect. Show up, daily. Not with fanfare, not with drama, just results. But don't misunderstand this. Consistency doesn't mean monotony. It means you've chosen a path, and now you're committed to evolving through it. It means you understand the difference between quitting and adjusting. Consistency isn't about doing the same thing forever. It's about staying true to the mission while being flexible with the method. You'll pivot, you'll refine, you'll learn, but you won't disappear. You won't vanish when the emotions fade. You won't shrink back into comfort. Because every time you break a promise to yourself, you confirm a lie that your word doesn't mean much. And that's the most dangerous belief you can carry. But the inverse is powerful. Every small promise kept, every alarm you honor, every task you finish, every distraction you override, strengthens your identity. Until one day you wake up, and you don't just want to be consistent, you are consistent. It's who you've become. And that version of you, they're lethal. Because while the world keeps betting on hype, they've quietly built themselves into a machine. Their name carries weight, their actions echo, their progress compounds. That can be you, but you have to stop treating consistency like a feeling and start treating it like a standard. From now on, it's not if you show up, it's how you adapt when you do. It's how you stay locked in when the motivation's gone, the results are slow, and the resistance is loud. The amateurs need hype to move. The disciplined move regardless. Be the disciplined. You've been lied to. You were taught that discipline is about control, that consistency is just about following a checklist, that it's mechanical, robotic, lacking soul. But here's the truth nobody tells you: consistency is the highest form of self-respect. You show up for the things you value. You show up for the people you care about. You don't bail on your best friend, right? Then why is it so easy to bail on yourself? Every time you flake on your own plan, every time you say tomorrow when you meant today, you chip away at the trust between who you are and who you want to be. But every time you show up, you heal that fracture. You stop being two people, the one who dreams and the one who delays, and you become one unified force, the person who follows through. And once you do that enough, a shift happens. Your identity catches up to your ambition. No more faking it. No more trying to feel confident. You become confident, not because someone told you you were good, but because you proved it to yourself over and over. This is what consistency gives you that motivation never can: evidence. You don't need to hope you'll succeed. You've got receipts. You've got receipts. You've got momentum. You've got proof. That's the edge. Momentum is everything. And here's what most people miss. It's not created in big leaps. It's created in tiny, repeatable wins. Wins that feel so small they're almost invisible, until they stack up. Until one day the compound interest of your consistency smacks the world in the face, and people start calling it talent. It's not talent, it's tempo. The ability to stay in rhythm when life tries to throw you off beat. Because it will. Your schedule will get messy. Your mood will dip. Distractions will scream for your attention. Chaos will knock on your door dressed as opportunity. And most people will open it. You won't. Because you're not driven by emotion anymore. You're powered by alignment. You know who you are. You know where you're going. And you know exactly what kind of pressure you need to apply every day to keep that train moving. You don't get high on peaks. You don't get crushed by valleys. You just keep showing up. Flatline, focused, relentless. And this is the secret sauce behind every great performer, every successful leader, every person who reshaped their life. They understood that greatness is built in the mundane, in the no one's watching moments, in the unsexy days, in the decisions no one will ever applaud. And they didn't just endure those moments, they owned them. That's where you win now. Not once, not twice, but over and over until the world has no choice but to take notice. You don't need a miracle. You need another rep. And after that, one more, and then one more. That's consistency. That's your edge. And it's unstoppable. There's something brutal and beautiful about consistency. Brutal because it will demand pieces of you that you didn't even know were soft. Beautiful because when it's done right, it doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you are. Consistency isn't about routines, it's about reconstruction. You're not just stacking reps. You're tearing down the fragile, reactive, easily distracted version of yourself and building something that lasts. Something solid, something unshakable. Most people can't do this because they're addicted to novelty. They need a new trick, a new method, a new morning ritual every few weeks just to stay engaged. They don't want discipline, they want stimulation. But consistency doesn't cater to your feelings. It demands your submission. It asks a simple question: can you show up when no one is watching? That's the test. That's always the test. Because everyone wants the reward, everyone wants the breakthrough, but few want the boredom, the grind, the lonely labor of the day-in, day-out march that forges real momentum. Consistency feels like repetition, until it suddenly feels like mastery. And you won't see it coming. One day you'll wake up, and the thing that used to drain you, you'll crush it before breakfast. The habit that once took willpower to maintain, it'll run on autopilot. The standards you once had to fight for, they'll be embedded in your DNA. That's the part nobody tells you. The compounding power of consistency isn't just in results, it's in identity realignment. You begin to see yourself differently. You start trusting your own word. You stop chasing short-term highs, because the long game has become your new drug. You don't just show up anymore, you expect yourself to. And that expectation is power, because people rise or fall to the level of their standards. When your standard becomes, I show up every day no matter what, the game changes. Suddenly, other people's inconsistency doesn't shake you. The chaos of life doesn't derail you. You don't fall off track when things get messy. You become the track, the thing everyone else holds on to when everything else is slipping. That's the reward for discipline multiplied by consistency. Presence, the ability to operate in storms, the calm inside the hustle, the fire that burns steady, not just hot. That kind of presence gets built when you say yes to your purpose. Every day, regardless of applause, reward, or recognition. That kind of presence becomes magnetic. People feel it when you walk in a room. They sense it in your posture, your energy, your silence. You don't need to announce yourself because your discipline has already spoken. Consistency is the quiet force that builds giants in the shadows. You want to lead? Start showing up like a leader before anyone claps for you. You want success? Start living like someone who has it. Not in money, but in mindset. Because the truth is, most people don't fail because they're inconsistent. They fail because they never gave consistency a long enough runway to take off. But you're not most people. You've got fire, you've got clarity, you've got direction. Now you've got one job. Stay in motion. Chapter 3. Radical responsibility. Everything in your life is your fault. Let that settle for a moment, not in a shame-filled, guilt-ridden way, not as punishment, but as power. Because until you accept full ownership of your choices, your habits, your reactions, your outcomes, you're living in someone else's game, someone else's rules, someone else's timeline. Radical responsibility means the excuses die here. No more blaming your parents. No more pointing fingers at your boss, your past, your genetics, your environment, your ex, or your bad luck. That game is over, because the second you blame, you hand your power away. You give up the one thing that can actually shift your life, your ability to choose different. And yes, life will throw you chaos you didn't cause, but how you respond, that's yours, always. Discipline begins with owning that truth. You don't get to control the weather, but you damn sure control whether you show up and work in the storm. You don't get to decide what pain hits you, but you decide what story you tell yourself about that pain and what you build with it. Responsibility isn't sexy. It doesn't trend. It doesn't earn sympathy, but it earns freedom. Because when you accept full control over your reaction, your effort, your habits, you stop waiting for the world to fix itself. You stop waiting for conditions to be right. You stop negotiating with reality. You move. You take action. You adjust. You take the hit, learn, and keep pushing. Not because you enjoy the struggle, but because you're done living like life happens to you. You happen to life now. Radical responsibility isn't about perfection. It's about ownership. You own your wins. You own your losses. You own the mess. You own the greatness. That kind of self-accountability is rare. And when you live it, you become untouchable. Because you're not held hostage by circumstances. You're not defined by your past. You're not swayed by opinion. You're rooted in the one thing that can never be taken from you, your choice. And here's where the magic begins. When you start owning everything, your results, your patterns, your triggers, your reactions, something shifts inside you. That victim voice, the one that wants to moan and point fingers, it dies. Slowly, quietly. And what replaces it is fire. The fire of knowing that no matter what happens, you're not going to break. You'll adjust. You'll adapt. You'll outwork, outlast, and outdiscipline your past version, because your progress doesn't depend on external peace. It depends on internal power. That power starts with 3 words. It's on me. Here's what radical responsibility looks like in the wild. You miss a deadline? It's on you. You're not getting results? It's on you. You're overwhelmed, distracted, behind on everything, still on you. Not the algorithm, not your upbringing, not the energy of the day. It's on you. And no, that's not cruelty. That's clarity. Because once you own it, you can fix it. Until then, you're powerless. Most people spend years dancing around that truth. They build entire identities around avoiding responsibility. They get addicted to victimhood. It's safer there. It's easier. You get to tell the story without doing the work. But safety is a lie. Because while you're hiding from responsibility, your power is wasting away. Your time is leaking. Your potential is starving. Responsibility is uncomfortable at first, but then it becomes your edge. Because once you fully own your role in every outcome, even the ugly ones, you unlock the freedom to do something about it. You stop waiting. You stop blaming. You start building. Every delay, you created it. Every bad decision, you made it. Every weakness, you allowed it. And that means you can replace it. Let this sink in. The moment you shift from, "Why is this happening to me?" to "What can I do about this?" you've already won. Because now you're the mover. You're the creator. You're in the driver's seat. And discipline thrives in that seat. Because discipline doesn't wait for the world to bend in its favor. It bends itself to match the mission. Want to change your health? Stop waiting for the perfect routine. Own your habits. Want to grow your income? Stop waiting for someone to discover you. Own your skills. Want to repair your relationships? Stop waiting for apologies. Own your part. This isn't about being hard on yourself. It's about being honest. The world doesn't reward sensitivity. It rewards standards. The world doesn't listen to intentions. It responds to action. You can talk about accountability, or you can live it. Radical responsibility is about becoming the kind of person who looks in the mirror and says, "This is mine, all of it." And that's a good thing, because now, finally, you're in control. Let's kill the illusion once and for all. Awareness is not enough. It's not power, it's potential. And potential unclaimed is just wasted energy. You can read every book, listen to every podcast, sit in every seminar, but until your awareness turns into action, you're just a spectator with good intentions. Responsibility demands execution. Not someday, not later, not when things settle down. Now, because life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It tests your commitment with chaos, stress, fatigue and failure. And when you move anyway, when you act in the face of all that, that's where the shift happens. That's where ownership becomes identity. Taking responsibility isn't about shouldering guilt. It's about claiming your power. It's about stepping into the role of the architect, not the bystander, not the victim, not the critic in the cheap seats. It's about becoming the builder. So you stop saying, "Why does this always happen to me?" and start asking, "What pattern am I repeating that allows this?" You stop saying, "I just need a break," and start asking, "What structure do I need to create so I don't burn out again?" You stop saying, "That's just how I am," and start asking, "What part of this story am I keeping alive because it's comfortable?" This is what real growth looks like. Not pretty, not perfect, but raw, intentional, relentless. And the more responsibility you take, the more dangerous you become, because there's no one left to blame, nothing to hide behind. You own your outcomes. And when you own them, you can upgrade them. That's what the undisciplined never understand. They think freedom is being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. But the truth? That's slavery to impulse. Freedom is being able to choose who you become, to design your day, your mind, your mission, to move with intention, not addiction, to act with clarity, not emotion. And that kind of freedom only comes through ownership. No more, maybe someday. No more, I'll try. No more, I'm just figuring it out. You're done figuring it out. You're building it with your actions, with your discipline, with your decision to stop explaining and start executing. This is your time. Own the whole damn thing. Here's the irony no one talks about. Most people think responsibility is a burden, but the real burden, living at the mercy of everything else, being reactive, blaming traffic, the weather, your boss, your upbringing, your mood, constantly shifting, explaining, defending, it's exhausting. You think it's lighter, but it's not. It's weight that drags quietly, but relentlessly. It shows up in anxiety, in procrastination, in the quiet guilt that creeps in at night when the noise dies down and the mirror is all that's left. You know the voice, the one that whispers, "You could be more if you'd just stop running." That voice doesn't want you perfect. It wants you honest. Because the minute you stop running from responsibility, the minute you face it full on, something incredible happens. The noise dies, the guilt fades, and what's left is clarity, clear effort, clear alignment, clear power. Responsibility doesn't weigh you down. It sets you free. Free from excuses, free from emotional debt, free from the quiet fear that you're not living up to your potential. And most of all, it makes you trustable. When you live with radical responsibility, people notice. They don't have to ask where you stand. They feel it in your presence, in your punctuality, in your posture, in the way you carry your work, your time and your word like sacred ground. You become rare. You become the person who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't fold when things go sideways, who doesn't need reminders, hand-holding, or constant motivation. You lead yourself. And when you lead yourself, you can lead anything. Your career, your health, your business, your circle. That kind of discipline isn't loud. It's steady, rooted, dangerous in the best way. And if you ever wonder if it's worth it, remind yourself of this. You're not here to impress. You're here to build, to stack days, to gain ground, to become the one who shows others what's possible when you stop outsourcing your power. So if you've made mistakes, own them. If you've dropped the ball, pick it up. If you've been hiding, step out. It's never too late to take full command of your life, but it will always be too early to keep waiting. Radical responsibility isn't the end. It's the beginning of everything you've been waiting for, and everything you're now ready to become. Own it, all of it, then move. Chapter 4. Turning resistance into fuel. Resistance is not your enemy. It's a compass, a signal, a flare fired from the core of your potential, showing you exactly where to go. The problem: most people run the moment they feel it. They interpret resistance as a warning sign. This feels hard. Maybe it's not for me. That feeling means it's exactly for you. The greater the resistance, the more vital the task. Every goal that matters will come wrapped in resistance. Every next level of your life will be guarded by that familiar friction in your chest, your mind, your gut. The voice that says, "Not now, you're not ready. What if you fail?" That voice is not truth. It's the echo of your past conditioning, screaming at you to stay small, because small feels safe. But you didn't come here to play safe. You came to build something solid, to become someone unshakable. And that means resistance isn't a barrier, it's a signal you're moving in the right direction. Stephen Pressfield called it the enemy of creativity. But here's the twist: it's also the birthplace of transformation. You don't build discipline in the absence of resistance. You build it in the confrontation. Every rep you push through when your body says stop. Every task you complete when your mind says rest. Every boundary you hold when your emotions beg for comfort. That's where you sharpen. That's where identity is forged. Resistance isn't the thing that breaks you unless you let it be. It's pressure. And pressure, when harnessed, creates diamonds. But you have to flip the mindset. Stop trying to avoid resistance. Start seeking it. Invite it to the table like a training partner. One whose job is to make you uncomfortable. Not because it hates you, but because it knows what's coming next. Progress. That unease in your stomach. The delay before you start. The dread before the workout. The task, the conversation. All of it is a doorway. And most people stand outside the door forever. You kick it in. Not with force, with frequency. You show resistance, it doesn't own you anymore. Because here's the truth. If you only work when it feels easy, you'll never cross into greatness. You'll stay in the loop. The comfort zone. The identity you've outgrown. But once you realize resistance isn't a wall, it's a threshold, you move through it. And on the other side, power, precision, peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding life, the peace that comes from dominating it on your terms. Resistance doesn't always show up with sirens and bold letters. No, it's subtle, it's clever, it wears costumes. Sometimes it looks like procrastination. Sometimes it feels like overthinking. Sometimes it whispers in the voice of reason. Let's wait. Let's do more research. Let's make sure it's the right time. But it's not logic, it's fear, dressed in professionalism, caution, self-care. And here's what separates the disciplined from the average. The disciplined recognize the costume. They see the hesitation, the urge to delay, the pull toward easy, and they attack it, because they know one thing. The moment resistance appears, it's a green light, not a red one. This feels hard. Good. Lean in. I don't want to do this right now. Perfect. That's the rep. They move toward the pain. They practice discomfort. They do the thing specifically because it's uncomfortable. And that creates separation. Not after years. Instantly. Because most people don't want this smoke. They're addicted to ease. Conditioned for safety. Trained by algorithms, ads and dopamine to avoid friction at all costs. But you know better. You know that every ounce of greatness lives behind friction. Every meaningful transformation you've ever gone through, physical, mental, emotional, came with pain, stretch, tension. And that tension, that's the forge. That's where new habits are born, where new identities are sculpted, where discipline stops being a goal and becomes a reflex. But it only works if you stay in the heat. And most people can't. They flinch. They run. They negotiate their way out with words like balance, ease, alignment, when what they really mean is avoidance. Balance is a myth if it costs you growth. Ease is a trap if it dulls your edge. Alignment is useless if it's an excuse for stagnation. Here's the better way. Use resistance as your North Star. Wherever it shows up, go. Whatever feels uncomfortable, do. Whatever scares you, within reason, with clarity, lean toward it. Because the goal isn't to avoid resistance, it's to become stronger than it. You don't conquer resistance once. You make it part of the plan. Every day you override it. You make a statement, you don't run me, I run you. And over time, resistance becomes respect. It bows, it weakens. Not because it disappeared, but because you got stronger. You rewired the system, and now you're dangerous. The disciplined don't fight resistance. They frame it. They stop asking, why is this so hard? And start asking, what is this trying to sharpen in me? That question flips everything. Suddenly resistance isn't a block. It's a doorway, not a threat, but a training ground. You want stronger focus. Resistance is going to show up in the form of distractions. You want to be more resilient. Resistance will disguise itself as failure. You want clarity. Get ready for confusion to knock first. That's the price of entry. But the moment you stop resenting the price, you start collecting dividends, because resistance is always the front gate of something valuable. The problem is, most people stop at the gate and try to go around. They try to manifest results without tension. They try to shortcut the climb. They want the identity without earning it through consistent confrontation. But you don't become disciplined by avoiding battles. You become disciplined by walking directly into them, clear-headed, unshaken. You take the resistance personally, not as an insult, but as a call to refine. Because resistance always has a lesson. It always holds a mirror. It shows you where you're soft, where you're still choosing comfort over calling, where you're still trying to bargain with your lower self. And when you face that mirror daily, the flinch fades. At first it'll sting. You'll see where you hesitate, where you lie to yourself, where you still drift. But after enough reps, enough days of choosing to move, when every part of you screams for stillness, you stop asking for the resistance to leave. You start thanking it for showing up, because now you see it for what it is: feedback. a signal that you're playing at the edge, where growth happens, where mediocrity dies. And you're not here for average. You're not here to get by. You're not here to work just hard enough to stay afloat. You're here to build dominance, to become unshakable, and to do that you need the resistance. Like a sword needs fire, like a sculptor needs stone. So stop waiting for resistance to disappear. Use it. Sharpen with it. Meet it daily, with discipline in your chest, and zero apology in your tone, because every time you do, you multiply your edge. You widen the gap between you and everyone else, still trying to skip the hard parts. And that gap, that's where the real ones rise. Here's what they won't tell you. The highest performers in the world don't just deal with resistance. They schedule it. They engineer it into their process. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they understand its role. They're not chasing ease. They're chasing elevation. And elevation doesn't come from working around the hard stuff. It comes from walking straight into it with a game plan. That's what separates the top 1%. They don't wait to feel like doing the work. They make resistance routine. Morning workouts they don't skip. Deep work blocks where distractions die. Hard conversations they lean into, not avoid. They train themselves to see resistance as a checkpoint. If I feel it, that's my cue. It means I'm getting close to something real. They don't ask for less pressure. They build systems that turn pressure into precision. And you can do the same. Start small. Track what triggers resistance in your day. Is it when you wake up? Is it when you sit down to work? Is it that one task you always delay? Perfect. That's your training zone. Don't avoid it. Don't numb it. Don't outsource it. Build around it. Make the friction part of your framework. You're tired in the morning. Create a wake-up protocol so strong that your feelings don't matter. You always skip deep work after lunch. Block the time. Lock the door. Turn off the noise. You avoid one critical task every day. Do it first. Make it rule number 1. This is how pros operate. They don't eliminate resistance. They neutralize its power. How? With systems. Because discipline alone will fail if it's always fueled by willpower. But discipline paired with structure, that's lethal. Structure gives resistance nowhere to hide. And when resistance shows up, and it will, you're already locked in. You've already decided. The decision has already been made. That's where peace lives. Not in the absence of struggle, but in the predictability of response. You know how you'll act when resistance knocks, because you've trained for it. You've systemized your values. You've put accountability in place. You've built rituals that operate even when your energy is gone. So instead of spending your day negotiating with the grind, you just move. Not because you feel like it, because that's what you do. That's the edge. That's the shift. And that's the discipline most people never reach, because they're still hoping resistance will vanish. It won't. But you don't need it to. You've already turned it into fuel. By now you understand. Resistance isn't your enemy. It's your proving ground. It's not the force holding you back. It's the force offering you the chance to rise. And once you shift that belief, you stop being surprised when resistance shows up. You start expecting it, preparing for it, using it. Because here's the truth. You don't grow in ease. You grow in effort. And resistance is where that effort lives. It's the moment the weights get heavy. The silence before the hard decision. The hesitation before the honest conversation. The discomfort before the first rep. Most people back down right there. You won't, because you're building a mind that treats resistance like a checkpoint.
a sign you're on the right path, not the wrong one. And what happens when you start chasing resistance instead of avoiding it? You unlock momentum. You don't get momentum by thinking. You don't get it by planning. You get it by moving through resistance, again and again, until it breaks before you do. And suddenly the reps you once dreaded become automatic. The tasks that used to paralyze you become part of your rhythm. The habits that felt impossible become non-negotiable. That's transformation, not dramatic, not loud, just consistent mastery of resistance, one day at a time. Now look at where resistance still owns you. What task do you avoid? What conversation do you keep dodging? What truth are you still afraid to face? That's the spot. That's your growth edge. That's the part of your life that's been waiting for you to stop hiding and start confronting. Don't flinch. Don't delay. Don't overthink. Move toward it. Because every time you do, your identity shifts from someone who hesitates to someone who executes. That shift is permanent if you make it consistent. And once it becomes who you are, resistance won't even feel like resistance anymore. It'll just feel like the signal that it's time to get to work. And when the world sees that, when they see you move calmly through chaos, push forward through friction, act while they're still analyzing, they'll call you focused, they'll call you disciplined, they'll call you different, and they'll be right, because you turned resistance into fuel. And now, you're unstoppable, you're unstoppable, you're unstoppable.
Chapter 5. The Power of Silence and Stillness. In a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion, not just silence in your environment, silence in your mind, silence in your reactions, silence in your decisions. That kind of stillness, that's where elite discipline begins. Most people fear silence because it reveals too much. Without noise, they're forced to face their truth, their hesitation, their contradictions. So they drown it with podcasts they don't listen to, with social scrolls that numb, with endless input, pretending it's research when it's just escape. But you're not most people. You don't fear the silence. You use it. You enter it like a fighter steps into the ring, focused, alert, dangerous. Because silence is where the work begins. It's where clarity is born. It's where the mission speaks without shouting. Most people look for more information. You need more integration. Because you already know what needs to be done. You've known. The resistance, the noise, the chaos, that's just static. And silence cuts through static, like a blade. The disciplined know this. A still mind is a sharp weapon. It's not lazy, it's loaded. Stillness isn't weakness, it's preparation. It's how you observe. It's how you recalibrate. It's how you separate what's urgent from what's important. Without stillness, you stay reactive. You confuse movement with progress. You become a machine running on anxiety and call it ambition. But ambition without presence is how you burn out. Stillness gives you presence, and presence gives you power. It doesn't mean you don't move. It means when you do, you move with precision. You hit cleaner. You choose sharper. You waste less. You protect your energy like it's the most valuable currency on earth. Because it is. That's the difference between performers who peak and performers who last. The ones who last are still. They're not the loudest in the room. They're not posting every step. They're not seeking validation in every action. They're locked in, quiet, focused, deadly. And when they speak, it cuts. When they move, it lands. When they choose, it's final. That kind of clarity isn't found in chaos. It's found in the space between distractions. The silence most people are too afraid to enter.
But you're stepping in. This is where your next level begins. Not in noise, but in the still, silent space where only truth remains. Silence is where the clutter dies. Mental clutter, emotional noise, the endless static of what if, what now, what will they think. It all fades when you train yourself to sit with stillness and listen, not to the world, to yourself. The disciplined don't run from silence, they return to it, daily, ruthlessly, intentionally, because that silence, it's not empty, it's full of information, instinct, truth, and it's where you start telling the truth you've been avoiding. The truth about what you're tolerating, the truth about where you're lying to yourself, the truth about the gap between who you are and who you keep pretending to be. It's in the silence that your excuses lose their power. Why? Because they echo too loud without the distractions to drown them out. You'll hear the procrastination dressed up as perfectionism. You'll hear the hesitation masquerading as strategy. You'll hear the comfort trying to convince you it's clarity. And that's when you choose, ignore it or confront it. Confront it, and you change. Ignore it, and you stay looped in chaos. Stillness is a confrontation. It's not peace, unless you've earned it. Until then, it's war with your own noise. But the more you practice it, the sharper you become. Your focus deepens, your attention span strengthens, your tolerance for nonsense shrinks. You stop chasing everything, you start choosing one thing. That's the root of self-discipline, selection, not doing more, doing less, better, not acting faster, acting smarter, not being everywhere, being fully where you are. Silence teaches you that, and in a world that profits from your distraction, choosing silence is an act of rebellion. It says, I don't need to consume, I need to create. It says, I don't need more noise, I need more nerve. It says, I don't follow chaos, I lead myself. Stillness is how you separate from the herd, because while everyone else is chasing the next shiny input, you're building output, work that matters, choices that stick. A life designed by discipline, not dictated by noise. It starts with one decision: mute the world. Hear yourself. Move deliberately. Stillness is the secret weapon of the disciplined mind, not because it's passive, but because it's precise. In a reactive world, the ability to pause, even for 3 seconds, before responding, is a superpower. Most people jump. You'll wait. Most people flinch. You'll aim. Stillness doesn't slow you down. It positions you to strike with intent. You don't need to rush when you're certain. You don't need to shout when your presence is loud enough. You don't need to prove anything when your actions echo louder than your words ever could. This is the paradox most don't understand. The more still you are, internally, the more unstoppable you become externally. Because in stillness, you see clearly. The distractions don't hook you. The triggers don't move you. The chaos doesn't own you. You become unshakable. But it has to be trained. Stillness doesn't show up because you read about it. It shows up when you choose it, over and over. In moments where reaction would be easier. It's when someone disrespects you, and instead of biting back, you breathe. It's when fear creeps in, and instead of spiraling you anchor. It's when urgency bangs on your door, and instead of rushing, you refocus. That's not weakness, that's leadership. Stillness is how you conserve energy, and conserving energy isn't about doing less, it's about wasting less. You stop chasing every notification, you stop responding to every opinion, you stop defending every move, because the still mind isn't insecure, it's aware, it's efficient, it's deadly in its silence. This is what most people miss. The people making the most noise often have the least to say, but the person who's locked in, calm, grounded, they're not looking for applause, they're aiming. And when they move with undeniable clarity. That's the energy you're building. Not frantic, not erratic, just full control. The kind of discipline that doesn't need to be explained. It's felt in how you carry yourself, in what you allow, in what you no longer tolerate. Because stillness sharpens your standards, and once your standards sharpen, everything else follows. The best decisions you'll ever make won't come from pressure, they'll come from stillness. From the pause between impulse and response. From the space you create before you act. Most people never give themselves that space. They act from reaction, not reflection. They say yes to what drains them. They chase what doesn't serve them. They commit to what they didn't even choose. They just got swept up in the momentum of noise. But not you. You've seen what happens when you move too fast with no clarity. You've paid the price for mistaking activity for alignment. Now you know better. Stillness is your filter. It's how you cut through the noise, separate real goals from ego goals, and design a life built on purpose, not performance. Stillness teaches you how to say no, not just to people, to patterns, to pressure, to any energy that pulls you away from the person you're becoming. You start turning down opportunities that don't align. You stop responding to every demand. You learn that discipline is less about doing more and more about protecting what matters. Stillness builds that discipline. It sharpens your self-respect. Because it's in the quiet that you see what you've been tolerating. You recognize the unnecessary. You trim the excess. And what's left? Only what's real. Only what moves you forward. Only what feeds your mission. This is how you build an environment of excellence. Not by working harder, but by removing the waste. The noise, the obligations born from insecurity. Stillness clears the field, and once the field is clear, your moves become surgical. No more flailing, no more guessing, no more draining yourself trying to keep up with chaos you never asked for. You create silence, then you build from there. You use the quiet to set direction. Then you move like a sniper, not a storm. And here's what most don't realize. Stillness is where confidence is born, because clarity breeds confidence, and clarity lives in silence. The most confident people in the room aren't the ones making the most noise. They're the ones who've sat in silence, confronted their own chaos, and came out with a plan. Now they don't need to prove, they just perform. That's you now, not reactive, not scattered, just centered, ready, disciplined. This isn't about meditation. This isn't about mantras or spiritual fluff. This is about mental weaponry. Stillness isn't a retreat. It's a recalibration. It's how warriors reset before stepping back into battle. It's how creators protect their energy before pouring it out. It's how leaders lead themselves before they try to lead anyone else. Stillness is the foundation of sustainable aggression. Anyone can go hard for a day. Anyone can grind through adrenaline and chaos. But the disciplined, they know how to stop, breathe, listen, reset, lock in. Stillness is what makes your intensity intentional. It makes your energy measured. It makes your execution ruthless, but never reckless. The undisciplined panic in pressure. They explode. They spiral. They need movement just to feel like they're not being left behind. But you understand that stillness doesn't slow you down. It prepares you, because if your mind is frantic, your results will be scattered. If your thoughts are noisy, your actions will be erratic. If your day starts in chaos, it ends in confusion. Stillness kills confusion. It gives you a clean place to build from, to return to when things get heavy, to measure yourself against, not the world, not your past, but the real you, and the real you. They don't react to pressure, they command it. They don't chase validation, they embody standards. They don't need to make noise, because their life is doing the talking. Silence sharpens that. Stillness reinforces it. And when you pair that calm with consistency, responsibility, and the ability to move through resistance, you become a force most can't explain. You won't be loud. You won't need hype. You won't beg for permission. You'll just move, in total command. Clear, confident, calculated, and calm even when the whole world is shaking, because you've built your discipline in silence. And now it speaks for you, it speaks for you, it speaks.
Chapter 6. Boundaries are standards in action. Discipline doesn't just show up in how you start your day, it shows up in what you allow. Because what you allow is what you're training your environment to expect from you. And over time, that becomes your identity. That's why boundaries matter. Not as defense, as definition. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. They're signals that say, this is who I am, this is what I allow, this is how I operate. Without boundaries, your energy leaks, your time gets stolen, your focus dissolves, your standards blur. People think being disciplined means grinding through work, but real discipline, it's saying no. It's protecting your priorities with the same intensity you use to pursue them, because every yes you give is a no to something else. And if you don't protect your yes, you'll end up living someone else's life. That's what happens when you move through life without internal boundaries. You respond instead of lead. You react instead of choose. You accept what's given instead of demanding what's aligned. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who's clear on what they will and won't tolerate, and honors that clarity with consistency. They don't flinch when people push. They don't fold when guilt shows up. They don't apologize for guarding what matters. Because they understand this truth: if you don't enforce your boundaries, no one else will. This isn't about being hard. It's about being clear. It's about knowing the line between what elevates you and what drains you, and having the courage to enforce that line, not with anger, not with arrogance, but with non-negotiable clarity. That's what boundaries really are. Your internal standards made visible to the world. They don't need to be shouted. They don't need to be explained. They just need to be kept. Because when you keep them, people learn, they adjust, they either rise to meet your level or they fall away. And both outcomes serve your mission. That's not cruelty. That's alignment. And alignment is where discipline thrives. Let's get clear on something. You're always teaching people how to treat you. Every time you allow disrespect, you train them it's tolerated. Every time you respond to chaos, you reinforce its place in your space. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you show them your values are negotiable. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential. Because if you're always available, always reachable, always saying yes to maintain peace, you're choosing peace outside at the cost of war inside. And that trade, that's slow suicide to your potential. Disciplined people know this. Protecting your energy is not about isolation, it's about prioritization. You're not cutting people off. You're cutting off access to distraction. You're choosing environments that match your ambition. You're choosing conversations that sharpen, not soften you. You're choosing tasks that compound, not deplete. And every boundary you hold becomes a vote for the future you're building. This isn't just about people. It's about habits, inputs, thoughts. Every behavior you repeat is either enforcing your vision or eroding it.
That's the real cost of weak boundaries. You drift, you scatter, you become a watered-down version of the clarity you once had. But with strong boundaries, your discipline becomes automatic. You don't have to waste energy deciding who to let in, what to work on, or what matters. It's already decided. Your life runs on standards, not emotions, not pressure, not guilt. And when someone violates your boundaries, you don't explain, you adjust their access. Not out of ego, out of principle. Because once you realize how valuable your time, focus and peace truly are, protecting them stops feeling harsh. It feels like integrity. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about holding space for what you've committed to. Your work, your health, your focus, your self-respect. The world isn't going to hand you that space. You have to take it. And the moment you do, everything around you and within you will shift. Most people think boundaries are limits. They're not. They're amplifiers. They don't restrict your power. They focus it. They don't fence you in. They clear out the noise so you can move with force. Because when you have clear boundaries, you eliminate decision fatigue. You stop wasting time debating what's a yes or no. You stop draining energy on conversations that should have ended months ago. You stop explaining yourself to people who've already shown they don't respect your standards. That's the shift. Your life becomes structured around what matters, and what doesn't enter. You guard your mornings. You defend your time. You say no with zero guilt, because your yes now carries weight. Every time you enforce a boundary, you reinforce who you are. You build identity, not from goals but from behavior. And the behavior is this: I choose what gets access to me. That's the energy the undisciplined can't hold. They say yes because they're afraid to offend. They people please because they're starving for approval. They avoid conflict because they've never learned to stand still in discomfort. But you're different now. You're not playing to be liked. You're playing to be clear, to be focused, to be fully aligned with your mission. That alignment requires pruning. People, habits, obligations that used to matter, but don't anymore. And letting go doesn't make you cold. It makes you exact. Discipline requires exactness. It requires clean boundaries that say, this is my deep work block. Don't disturb me. This is my recovery time. I'm not available for last-minute drama. This is my standard. Meet me here, or don't meet me at all. And you don't apologize for it. Because boundaries aren't requests. They're rules of engagement. The moment you start treating them that way, the game changes. People will either meet you at your level, or they'll remove themselves. Either way you win, because what's left is focus, space, peace, progress. And every boundary you hold builds the one thing most people can't fake: self-respect. You can't be elite and accessible to everyone. That's the uncomfortable truth most won't accept. They want growth and approval, focus and constant interaction, discipline and open-door availability. But every yes has a price. And at a certain level, that price is your potential. That's where boundaries step in. Not to make you cold, but to make you precise. Because clarity doesn't happen in chaos. It happens in structure, in rhythm, in environments you engineer, not environments that hijack you. You don't owe the world unlimited access. You owe your mission, your full presence. And that means fewer open tabs, fewer reactive texts, fewer unnecessary check-ins that keep you busy but unfocused. Let's talk strategy. What does a real boundary look like in practice? Blocking your calendar for focus and honoring that block like a non-negotiable meeting. Creating systems that guard your time, so you don't have to explain your no. Having pre-decided rules. I don't check my phone before 10 a.m. I don't take meetings on creative days. I say no to anything not aligned with my top 3 priorities. These aren't just habits. They're filters that keep you out of chaos and inside your purpose. Because if your life is constantly interrupted, it's not because you're too busy. It's because you haven't trained the world how to respect your space. And yes, this takes repetition. Boundaries don't hold themselves. You have to hold the line again and again and again until people stop testing it, until the world knows this is who you are now. And if someone can't handle your boundary, that's data, not your problem. That's proof they were never there to build with you, only to use you. Let them go. The ones who belong will adapt. They'll respect your time. They'll mirror your standards. They'll rise with you, not drain you. That's what boundaries attract. Alignment. And in alignment, discipline multiplies. You get more done with less stress. You recover faster. You feel lighter. Not because your life is easier, but because your life is yours. And that kind of ownership, it starts with a single repeated act. This is what I allow. Boundaries aren't about control. They're about clarity. And clarity is what gives your discipline teeth. Anyone can talk about focus. Anyone can post about ambition. But when it comes time to draw the line, to protect their space, energy, time, most people fold. Why? Because they confuse boundaries with conflict. They think saying no is rejection. They think structure is limitation. They think clarity makes them hard. But here's the truth. Clarity makes you free. Because when you live by boundaries, you no longer move in reaction. You move in rhythm. You don't chase approval. You don't explain your priorities. You don't negotiate your standards every time someone else is uncomfortable with your growth. You lead. And leadership, real leadership, starts with how well you govern yourself. You want to lead a team. Start with your calendar. You want to lead your family. Start with your focus. You want to lead a movement. Start with your mornings. Because every time you hold a boundary, you reinforce something far more powerful than your time. You reinforce your identity. The disciplined version of you doesn't entertain every invitation. They don't chase every opportunity. They don't respond to every demand. They move with filter. And that filter is what separates high performers from scattered ones. Boundaries make your yes potent. Because people know when you speak, act, commit, it means something. You're not trying to be everywhere. You're not trying to be everything. You're trying to be effective. That's what boundaries protect. Effectiveness. They're not armor to hide behind. They're alignment tools. And the more you honor them, the more you realize, you don't have to say more. You don't have to prove more. You don't have to chase more. You just have to enforce what matters. And when that becomes your default, when protecting your peace, your time, and your mission becomes normal, that's when discipline becomes effortless. Because now your entire life is built to support your highest standard. And that life, it doesn't tolerate chaos. It doesn't beg for permission. It doesn't collapse under pressure. It holds the line and invites the world to rise or move on. That's real discipline. And it starts with a simple truth. What you allow continues. So make your boundaries loud, even if your words stay quiet. Because your standards, when enforced, will speak for you. Will speak for you.
Chapter 7. Identity is the foundation of discipling. You don't need more motivation. You need a new identity. Because behavior always follows belief. You can set goals, stack habits, download planners, but if your internal identity still whispers, This isn't who we are. You'll sabotage every step. That's why the undisciplined don't stay consistent, not because they're lazy, but because they're living in conflict. They try to act like the person they want to be, while still identifying with the person they've always been. That's the split. That's the gap. That's what kills momentum. Until you change your identity, your discipline will always feel like effort, not expression. Because true discipline doesn't come from gritting your teeth every morning. It comes from alignment. It's who you are now. You don't try to stay focused. You're a focused person. You don't attempt to work out. You're an athlete. You don't struggle to say no. You're a leader who protects their energy. It's not ego, it's architecture. You're building a mental framework that makes discipline feel natural, automatic, integrated. Not because life gets easier, but because you've changed the role you play in it. Think about it. The person who believes they're a procrastinator, they'll delay. The person who believes they always quit, they'll tap out early. The person who says, "I'm just not consistent," will find ways to break their own word. Not because they want to fail, but because their brain is trying to stay congruent with the story. And that story, that's the operating system your entire life runs on. If you want sustained change, deep, lasting transformation, you don't just change your behavior, you change the story. You rewrite the identity. And here's where it starts. One decision, one choice repeated until it becomes a character trait. One action done consistently enough that your brain stops seeing it as effort and starts seeing it as you. That's the bridge between discipline and identity. You're not trying to be better, you're becoming someone new, one aligned, intentional, powerful decision at a time. You become what you consistently do, but even deeper, you become what you consistently believe. That belief shows up in your habits, your self-talk, your reactions when things get hard, your standards when no one's watching. And all of it is rooted in identity. This is why some people never change, even with all the tools, resources, mentors in the world, because their self-image hasn't moved. They're still carrying old programming, still referring to themselves by outdated labels. I'm not a morning person. I'm just bad with money. I always fall off. I'm too emotional to stay consistent. I've just never been disciplined. Those aren't facts. They're scripts, written years ago, repeated so many times they sound like truth. But here's the thing about identity. It's fluid, it's flexible, it's programmable. You don't have to wait for trauma, rock bottom, or a wake-up call to rewrite the code. You can choose to change the role now. Start with this. Who do I want to become? Not what do you want to achieve. Who do you need to be to live that life? Describe that person. How do they speak? What time do they wake up? How do they move through stress? What do they do when no one's watching? What do they no longer tolerate? Now ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do today that's something they would do? And do that thing. Then do it again tomorrow. Then again the next day. Stack the behaviors, reinforce the evidence. Let the identity evolve from repetition, not inspiration. That's the trick most people miss. They think identity is something you think your way into, but identity is something you prove your way into. The moment you start acting like the person you want to be, consistently, especially when it's hard, you send a signal to your brain. This is who we are now, and your brain over time will start to follow. Suddenly, discipline stops being a struggle. It becomes structure, because your actions no longer feel forced. They feel familiar. That's the power of identity alignment. You're not faking it. You're becoming it. Your identity is not built in declarations.
It's built in patterns, patterns of follow-through, patterns of integrity, patterns of doing what you said you'd do, especially when it's inconvenient. Discipline becomes easier not because the resistance disappears, but because your new identity can no longer tolerate betrayal. Betrayal of your goals, your word, your standards. You become allergic to the old habits that used to feel normal, not because you hate yourself, but because they no longer match the identity you've committed to. And that's what real discipline is: alignment in motion. You don't have to psych yourself up to do the hard thing. You just remind yourself, this is what someone like me does. And that one line, it rewires everything. Someone like me doesn't hit snooze. Someone like me doesn't ghost on responsibility. Someone like me doesn't negotiate with mediocrity. Someone like me leads, not when it's convenient, but because it's required. This is the edge most people will never reach, because they're trying to perform discipline without identity. They think discipline is effort. You've learned its expression of the internal truth that's been crafted, not overnight, but through repetition, sacrifice, and refusal to settle. Because once you start seeing yourself as someone who is disciplined, something subtle happens. Your standards rise automatically. You stop tolerating people and patterns that don't serve your momentum. You reinforce your identity with action instead of argument. And when the outer world tests you, and it will, your response isn't random. It's rooted. You don't backslide into the old version of you, because that version no longer feels like home. You've upgraded your mental address. And this upgrade isn't cosmetic. It's structural. It reprograms your instincts. You default to ownership instead of excuses. You pivot to purpose instead of panic. You lean into resistance instead of retreating. Because identity isn't just about who you are. It's about what you now refuse to be. That refusal becomes your firewall. The line you will not cross. The standards you will not break. The mission you will not abandon, no matter the noise, pressure, or temptation to go back. You've seen too much. You've built too much. You've become too much. And there's no version of the past worth trading for what you've built in this new identity. You can't act inconsistent with your identity for long. Eventually your mind will pull you back into alignment. Whether that alignment lifts you or locks you down depends on who you believe you are. This is why willpower alone is never enough, because willpower runs out. But identity repeats. It auto-corrects. You can miss a rep, a task, a target, and instead of spiraling you recover. Because deep down you know, this isn't like me. That phrase right there, it's a compass. It tells you when you're in integrity and when you're out. And that internal correction, that's how the elite operate. They don't need external accountability. They don't need reminders or rewards. They operate from identity-level discipline. It's not something they remember to do. It's who they are. It's embedded in their day, their tone, their presence. And that's what you're building. But it takes vigilance, because the old identity will try to resurface, especially under stress. The moment you're overwhelmed, it'll whisper. The moment you're tired, it'll knock. The moment things get uncertain, it'll beg to come home. But you're not that version anymore. You've outgrown their excuses. You've evolved beyond their patterns. And you've made too many promises to yourself to slip back into their rhythm. So when that old identity calls, you don't answer. You get up. You move. You act in alignment with your future self, not your former one. That's the discipline upgrade. You stop choosing based on what feels good now, and start choosing based on who you've decided to become. And every time you do, the new identity locks in deeper. You make it harder to go back. You increase the gravitational pull forward. You replace doubt with evidence. You stack days, and those days compound into something unshakable. That's when the internal shift becomes visible. People start asking what changed. They think it's your habits. They think it's your goals. But you know the truth. It's your identity. You've rewritten the script. And now, everything, your time, your discipline, your boundaries falls into place. Because your life always mirrors your self-image. And when that image is clear, powerful, disciplined, so is everything else. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You rise or fall to the level of your identity. That's the truth most high performers eventually face. Not early, but once the motivation fades, once the systems falter, once real life gets messy. Because when everything feels off, when the calendar's blown up, when fatigue hits like a freight train, you're not reaching for a strategy. You're reaching for a sense of self. Who am I when this gets hard? That's the question discipline answers. And if your answer is rooted in identity, you'll keep moving. You'll still rise at 5. You'll still hit the reps. You'll still execute the plan, not because it's easy, but because you no longer recognize the version of you who doesn't. That's the final evolution of discipline. When it's no longer something you do, it's something you are. There's no switch to flip, no cheerleader needed, no mood check, just action, aligned, anchored, automatic. But let's be clear, you didn't stumble into this, you built it. One micro decision at a time, one internal rewrite at a time, one conscious rejection of the old you, and full ownership of the new. And now, you walk different, think sharper, move cleaner, decide faster. Because you've stopped trying to chase discipline. You've started embodying it. You've decided, I'm the kind of person who finishes. I'm the kind of person who leads. I'm the kind of person who holds the line when others fold. I'm the kind of person who keeps their own word, no matter what. I'm the kind of person who doesn't need permission to evolve. That identity becomes your infrastructure. It holds under pressure. It adapts when the plan changes. It protects you from the chaos of circumstance. Because now your discipline is coming from somewhere deeper, from alignment with your mission, your standards, your code. And codes, they don't flex with feelings. They stay, they lead, they define. That's what you've done here. You've gone from wishful thinking to internal alignment, from scattered behavior to unified identity, from reacting to life to commanding it. This is what it means to be truly disciplined, not just for a season, not just for a streak, but as a way of being. From this point forward, it's not about becoming someone better. It's about honoring who you've already become.
Chapter 8. Mastering Delayed Gratification. Discipline isn't just doing the hard thing, it's doing the hard thing now for the payoff that might not come for months or years. That's what separates the disciplined from the distracted. The ability to choose impact later over comfort now. We live in a culture obsessed with now. Now results. Now pleasure. Now recognition. Swipe. Stream. Scroll. Buy. Everything is designed to hit you with fast dopamine, but fast dopamine is fast distraction dressed up like progress. The real players, they delay the dopamine. They trade now for later like it's a skill set, because it is. Delayed gratification is the adult version of ambition. It's what turns an idea into a legacy, a start into a system, a grind into a win that lasts. And here's what most people miss. Every time you choose short-term pleasure over long-term payoff, you're teaching your brain that instant relief is more important than meaningful results. And the brain learns fast, so you reach for comfort. You delay the work. You choose ease. And over time, you stop trusting yourself to finish what you start. But here's the shift. Every time you delay gratification, even in the smallest way, you build authority over yourself. You prove, I can wait. I can hold the line. I don't need it now to feel whole. That's what the world doesn't understand about discipline. It's not about being a machine. It's about being strategic with your hunger. You don't starve it. You channel it. You don't chase every pleasure that passes your vision. You know which ones are earned. You know what's worth holding out for. You know the difference between a hit and a harvest. A hit is quick. A harvest takes time, but it feeds more, lasts longer, and scales bigger. That's your move now. No more impulse decisions. No more quick validations. No more sacrificing your future just to feel better in the moment. Discipline says, I'll suffer a little today so I can win big tomorrow. I'll skip the applause now because the scoreboard later will be louder. I'll build patiently while everyone else begs for shortcuts, because the real ones don't need it fast, they need it forever. Here's the secret no one wants to hear. Your future is built in the moments you resist what feels good right now. That moment when you want to quit early, but finish anyway. That moment when the cookie calls louder than the gym, but you train anyway. That moment when the distraction screams, but you stay locked in. Those aren't just tiny wins. They're proof. They're bricks. And every one of them stacks toward a version of your life no one else can see yet. Because here's the truth. The future you want isn't waiting at the end of your next dopamine hit. It's waiting behind the things you don't want to do, but do anyway, because they matter more than the moment. That's where 99% of people fold. They want growth, but they don't want delay. They want progress, but they need pleasure now. They talk discipline, but they move like comfort is king. But you've seen the truth. Every easy choice now makes the next one harder. Every hard choice now makes the next one easier. And over time, that becomes identity. You become the one who doesn't need shortcuts. You become the one who doesn't trade long-term greatness for 5 minutes of feeling better. You become the one who can delay the reward, because you've already decided the result is non-negotiable. You're not chasing pleasure. You're building leverage. Leverage over your time. Leverage over your habits. Leverage over every moment where most people fold and call it balance. Delayed gratification isn't about deprivation, it's about ownership. The person who can delay gratification owns their emotions, owns their schedule, owns their results, not just when it's sunny, but when it's storming. They see the big picture. They play the long game. They smile at the people chasing now, because they know what's coming later, and later. That's where the real wins are. The big moves, the compound gains, the legacy outcomes that only reveal themselves to the patient, disciplined and dangerous. Because most people quit before the compound effect kicks in. But not you. You're still moving, still stacking, still refusing to let a single moment of pleasure derail a lifetime of progress. You've learned how to wait, and in that wait, you've become powerful. Every time you delay gratification, you don't just build results, you build resilience. You're increasing your threshold for discomfort, stretching the limits of what you can hold, sharpening your ability to stay steady when everyone else breaks. Because here's what people miss. Delayed gratification isn't about denial, it's about domination. You're not just saying no to what's easy. You're saying yes to the future that your current self can't even fully imagine yet. That's vision, and vision requires restraint. Restraint from indulging every impulse.
restraint from reacting to every craving, restraint from measuring your worth by today's scoreboard. Because today's scoreboard is a lie. It doesn't measure your discipline, it measures your delay. And the longer you delay, the heavier your wins land. The louder they echo, the deeper they root. That's why the disciplined aren't flashy. They're quietly lethal, because they're not here to flex temporary gains. They're building permanent separation, and that separation is forged in moments the world doesn't see. When you shut down the laptop at 2 a.m. after a full day, not because you had to, but because you said you would. When you show up to the gym when no one else is there, because the reps still count even when there's no audience. When you choose sleep over Netflix, clarity over chaos, purpose over pleasure, because your standards demand it. That's not about pain, that's about precision. And the more you do it, the more you realize, discipline doesn't feel restrictive. It feels real, like you're finally aligned. Like your life finally matches your vision. Like your word to yourself actually means something. That's freedom. Freedom isn't doing what you want when you want. It's having full control over what you do, especially when you don't feel like it. Because when you delay gratification long enough, you stop craving it. You start replacing it with something better, with purpose, peace, power, identity. You don't need the hit. You've built the habit. You've earned the long game. And now, you move differently, because you know exactly where this road leads. Here's what most people will never understand. Every delayed pleasure now compounds into power later. It's not a single choice. It's a signal, a message you send to your brain. I am in control. And that message, it builds momentum, because momentum isn't built from big moves. It's built from small refusals, small rejections of ease, small acts of patience that echo louder with every repetition. You pass on the second helping. You silence the urge to scroll. You say no to the unaligned invitation, and you do it again tomorrow. That's the game. The undisciplined never learn. They want breakthroughs, not behaviors. But the ones who win, they build systems from sacrifices. They earn trust with themselves. Not just once, not just when it's trending, but daily, quietly, repeatedly. That's how discipline becomes identity. And here's the twist. Once you master delayed gratification, it stops feeling like sacrifice. It starts feeling like freedom, because you're no longer a slave to urges. You don't flinch when cravings come. You don't bend when pressure mounts. You don't grab at the short term just to soothe the noise inside. You've replaced that noise with direction, and direction drowns distraction. Now the game isn't about getting through the day. It's about building a life that compounds. Think long, think generational, because delayed gratification doesn't just serve the next quarter. It sets up the next decade. The money you save today creates freedom. Your future self will bless you for. The workout you show up for today adds strength your 60-year-old self will still be carrying. The silence you sit in today becomes the clarity that shapes your biggest decisions tomorrow. This is more than mindset. It's math, and the math doesn't lie. Small decisions, repeated with intention, compound into lives no one else gets to live. Delayed gratification is how you buy that life. And every time you choose it, you're making an investment in energy, clarity, health, wealth, peace. It doesn't feel good in the moment, but neither does quitting. And one of those roads leads somewhere you can be proud of. You know which one you're walking now. This isn't just about waiting. It's about wiring. Because every time you delay gratification, you're not just postponing a pleasure. You're installing a new pattern. A pattern that says, I choose vision over impulse. I act for who I'm becoming, not what I'm feeling. I make decisions that build long-term strength, not short-term comfort. And when that becomes your wiring, everything changes. You stop chasing, you start attracting, you stop reacting, you start executing, you stop needing results now, because you've already committed to who you'll be regardless of when the reward shows up. That's not mindset, that's mastery. The disciplined don't need constant payoff. They don't work for validation. They don't treat consistency like a bet. They treat it like a promise. And promises kept over time, they turn into identity. They create reputations. They build lives other people study. But not because it was easy, because it was earned. Earned in the quiet moments where you chose to delay. When you turned down the quick win. When you traded the flash for the foundation. You didn't flex. You focused. And now, you've built distance. Not from other people, from your past self. The one who craved the hit. The one who folded for convenience. The one who needed now to feel okay. That version, gone. You've stepped into discipline. And discipline doesn't demand ease. It demands alignment. You're not waiting for motivation anymore. You're waiting for results. And building them every single day through restraint, patience and clarity. That's what delayed gratification really is. Unshakable faith in what's coming, backed by undeniable action in the now. It's not punishment, it's power. It's proof that you don't need it today, because you're building something that will feed you for life. Let everyone else settle. You've trained yourself to wait, to earn, to build what lasts, because you don't just want the win, you want the whole legacy, and you're willing to do what most won't, to live in a way most never will,
Chapter 9. Energy is your highest currency. You don't have a time problem. You have an energy problem. Because even if you had 48 hours in a day, if you're mentally fried, emotionally drained, physically sluggish, you're not getting anything meaningful done. That's what most people miss about discipline. They try to time block their calendar, but they don't energy block their life. They put high priority work in low energy windows. They make crucial decisions while running on fumes. They try to stay consistent, but their battery's been leaking all day. Discipline doesn't just mean pushing harder. It means learning how to protect and direct your energy. That starts with awareness. Who drains you? What environments deplete you? Which habits tax your focus and leave you foggy? Because if you don't audit that, you'll spend your best energy on things that don't move the needle. And by the time it's time to build, lead, write, lift, think, or create, you've got nothing left. This isn't about hustling harder. It's about stewarding your power. Your energy is your edge. It's the fuel behind every rep, every decision, every conversation. And if it's scattered, your results will be too. So here's the mindset shift. Discipline means being ruthless about where your energy goes. That might mean saying no to people who mean well but cost you momentum. That might mean limiting exposure to information that stresses you but doesn't serve you. That might mean stopping the scroll, tightening the diet, sleeping earlier, protecting mornings like sacred ground. None of that is sexy. All of that is strategy. Because if you're serious about your goals, you don't just guard your time, you guard your capacity. Capacity is everything. Without it, you'll fake productivity. You'll confuse exhaustion for effort. You'll run through the day like a phone at 3%, clutching the charger, but never fully plugged in. That's not how you move anymore. You're not trying to do more. You're trying to move cleaner, sharper,
with intention and presence. That starts by mastering your energy, because everything you build depends on it. Think of energy like a budget. Every day you get a limited amount. Some days more, some days less, but it's never infinite. So the question isn't just what do I have to do today? It's what's worth spending energy on today. Because not everything deserves it. Just like you wouldn't hand out $100 bills to every stranger you pass, you shouldn't hand out energy to every demand that hits your inbox, your phone, your emotions. Most people treat their energy like it's free. They say yes to too many things. They run around reacting, and by midday, they're drained, not from doing what matters, but from leaking. The disciplined move different. They spend energy like it's gold. They put high energy focus toward high return tasks. They schedule thinking time, because clarity is fuel. They protect mornings like prime real estate. Not for scrolling, but for strategy. They set limits on drama, chaos, meaningless conversations, because all of it has a cost. You've got to ask, is this building me, draining me, or distracting me? If it's draining you and not part of your mission, reduce it. If it's distracting you, cut it. And if it's building you, invest more. This is how you make your energy work for you. Because when you treat it like a resource, you stop reacting like everyone else. You become intentional, efficient, lethal. And here's where the magic happens. Once you start managing your energy, not just your time, you gain capacity, more clarity, more calm, more focus for what actually moves the needle. Suddenly the same 24 hours, they stretch. The same to-do list, it tightens. The same demands, they hit different. Because now you choose what gets your power. This isn't soft, this is strategy. Because long-term discipline isn't about pushing until you break. It's about preserving what makes you dangerous. And what makes you dangerous isn't just your mind. It's how well you protect the fuel that powers it. That fuel, that's energy. And it's time to treat it like what it is, your most valuable asset. Energy doesn't just vanish. It leaks. It gets stolen, traded, wasted, often without you even noticing. Until one day you're exhausted, and not because you worked hard, but because you worked leaky. You gave power to problems that weren't yours. You gave attention to people who never earned it. You gave effort to tasks that don't matter 5 days from now, let alone 5 years. That's not discipline, that's default. And default drains you. But discipline plugs the leaks. It starts by asking one powerful question: what am I tolerating that's costing me? Costing you focus, costing you energy, costing you momentum. Because every tolerance is a tax. That unread notification buzzing in the background. Tax. That vague commitment you haven't cancelled yet. Tax. That open loop in your brain you keep avoiding. Tax. And the price you pay. Clarity, energy, presence. So you clean house. You simplify. You close loops. You say the hard no. You remove the maybe. Because discipline isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less with precision. Energy expands when clutter dies. So you take your mornings back. You build buffer into your schedule. You unplug not to escape, but to reload. Because reloading isn't laziness, it's leverage. The disciplined aren't always on. They're strategically off so they can be lethal when they're on. You have to know your energy rhythm. Know when your fire burns brightest. Know when you need to pause. Know when a yes today means a weaker tomorrow. That's real mastery. You don't move because it's time to grind. You move because your system is powered, protected and aimed like a laser. And that kind of discipline, That's not hustle. That's calibrated execution. Discipline isn't about working harder. It's about working from your highest state. Because what you produce at 100% energy in 2 hours, that's worth more than what most grind out in 10 half-distracted, half-burned-out hours. This is how high performers think. They don't ask, how much can I do today? They ask, when am I most powerful? And how do I protect that window? They design their day around peak energy. You have those windows too. The early morning fire, the late night clarity, the mid-afternoon flow. It's your job to find them, and then protect them like your career depends on it. Because it does. Protect them from random meetings, mindless scrolling, unnecessary conversation. Just one quick thing. Request anything that doesn't multiply your purpose. You build a fortress around your fire. Because you don't just need time to do the work. You need full energy to dominate it. This is the missing piece for most people. They show up to the gym tired. They sit down to work foggy. They start the day in chaos, and then wonder why they feel like they're grinding without traction. It's not the grind, it's the leaks. Discipline plugs the leaks. You create rituals that set your rhythm. A solid wake-up routine. A caffeine protocol that works for you, not against you. A no-phone zone before the work begins. Deep work blocks that run uninterrupted. Recharge blocks that are just as sacred. And most of all, you stop waiting until you're burned out to manage your energy. You get ahead of it. You stay fueled, mentally, physically, emotionally, by making decisions before exhaustion shows up. Because once your energy's gone, the damage is done. And recovery always takes more time than you expected. So the new standard: protect the fire, feed the flame, move on your time, not life's interruptions. That's how the disciplines stay consistent. They're not always moving fast, but they're always moving from full, not from fumes. You've heard it before, time is money. But that's only half the truth. Because time without energy is worthless. What's a free afternoon worth if you're too mentally fried to focus? What's a 10-hour workday worth if half of it is scattered, sluggish, distracted? Here's the real truth. Energy is the currency that makes time valuable. And the disciplined, they spend it like it's limited and powerful. Because it is. They don't waste high energy on low-level tasks. They don't answer low-vibe messages in their peak state. They don't try to perform at 100% off 4 hours of sleep, 3 cups of coffee, and 0 boundaries. They know their input fuels their output. So they eat with intention. They sleep with discipline. They unplug without guilt. They recover like it's part of the plan, not a luxury. That's the shift. You stop seeing recovery as a reward and start seeing it as a responsibility. Because your mind is a weapon, and weapons need maintenance. Your focus is a tool, and tools need sharpening. Your body is a battery, and batteries need charging. This is where most people burn out. Not because they're soft, but because they're undisciplined with their energy. They push when they should reset. They say yes when they should unplug. They treat performance like an emergency, instead of a calibrated strategy. Not you, not anymore. You've learned to track your energy like an asset, to protect it like an investor, to charge it like a machine that's built for long-term execution. Because now your life isn't run on pressure, it's run on power management. Power in your calendar, power in your nutrition, power in your boundaries, power in your sleep, power in your decisions. Every time you say no to energy leaks, you say yes to your potential. Every time you step away from noise, you step deeper into mastery. Every time you prioritize your energy, You give your discipline a place to live, grow, and dominate. That's the move now. You're not chasing more hours. You're maximizing the hours you have. You're not praying for balance. You're creating capacity. Because a clear, focused, charged up version of you, that version is unmatched.
Chapter 10. When it sets hard, it counts more. Everyone's disciplined when it's easy. When the gym is quiet, the inbox is empty, the mood is high, but discipline isn't proven in ease. It's proven in resistance. Because life won't always cooperate. Plans will blow up. Energy will dip. The perfect schedule will collapse by 9 a.m. And when that happens, that's the test. That's where it counts more. Not less, more. The disciplined understand this. Hard days don't disqualify the work. They validate it. They don't see chaos as an excuse to bail. They see it as a chance to anchor deeper into the mission. This is hard, perfect. Let's go anyway. That's the energy. Because what you do on the hard days becomes your floor, your default operating standard. And when your floor is strong, your ceiling rises. You get through setbacks faster. You build resilience into your routine. You don't fall apart every time the rhythm breaks, because you've trained yourself to perform under pressure. That's the shift most never make. They think discipline is a feeling, but feelings are fragile. Discipline is trained response. You train it by showing up tired. You train it by moving through resistance. You train it by saying yes to the work after the feeling has left. And no, it won't be perfect. But perfection was never the goal. The goal is consistency under chaos, because the more chaos you can function inside, the more dangerous you become. Life won't get easier, but you can get stronger. Not through hacks, through habits. Not through hacks, through internal standards so sharp they cut through every excuse your mind throws at you. You don't get better by waiting for life to align. You get better by choosing who you'll be when it doesn't. And every time you choose discipline under pressure, you reinforce your identity as someone who doesn't break, someone who builds through the storm. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what now. You can be tired, frustrated, unmotivated, pulled in every direction. None of that disqualifies you. None of it erases your goals. None of it matters unless you let it. Because discipline isn't about being emotionless. It's about being unmoved by emotion. The difference, one tries to numb out. The other moves anyway. That's what you're building. Emotional sovereignty. The ability to act, not because the moment feels good, but because the mission still matters. And the mission always matters. Even when you're not in the mood. The results aren't showing yet. No one's clapping. The plan broke. Your motivation's missing. Everything feels heavier than usual. Especially then, that's when it counts more. Because most people fold right there. They start negotiating. I'll double up tomorrow. One missed day won't hurt. I just need a break. But breaks become patterns. Patterns become identity. And identity becomes the reason they never cross the line. Not you. You've burned the bridge to that version of yourself. Because this is the part where you separate. The moments when it's hard, that's when your discipline starts to compound. Anyone can show up when they're fired up. It takes a different animal to show up when they're depleted and still deliver. And when you do, that's not just a win. That's a shift, a rewiring, a vote for the version of you that's unshakable, not just on your best day, but on your worst. And once you start stacking days like that, you don't just build habits. You build a reputation with yourself. The kind of internal trust that doesn't flinch. The kind that doesn't require hype.
The kind that's earned in silence and expressed through unmatched consistency. Every setback is a stress test. A test of your systems. A test of your commitment. A test of whether your discipline is real or just performance during calm waters. You don't build resilience in theory. You build it under fire. And fire isn't the enemy. It's the forge. Think about it. Missed a deadline. Perfect. Time to reassess structure. Had a rough night's sleep. Good. Now let's see if your standards are built for fatigue. Didn't feel like doing the work. Ideal. Now you get to prove it's not about your feelings. Failed hard in public. Even better. Nothing sharpens your humility and hunger faster. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's about reframing adversity as training. Because if your discipline only works in perfect conditions, it's not discipline. It's convenience. But if you've trained for the hard, now you're untouchable. You don't panic when plans change. You don't spiral when momentum slows. You pivot. You press forward. You adapt with force and calm. That's elite. And elite doesn't mean robotic. It means regulated. Regulated energy. Regulated emotion. Regulated execution. Even when things feel broken, you become the kind of person who doesn't just survive setbacks. You absorb them. You learn. You tighten systems. You reinforce the gaps. Every blow is feedback. Every curveball is data. And all of it can be converted into discipline. If you're willing to see it that way. Most won't. They'll blame, pause, pity themselves. You won't. You'll recalibrate. You'll move. And you'll become harder to knock off your rhythm next time. That's what discipline under pressure builds. Rhythm that can't be broken. Because even if the pace slows, the pattern remains. Even if the output dips, the standard holds. And even when the storm hits, the mission continues. Here's what separates the disciplined from everyone else. When it's hard, they double down on who they are. Not with talk, with action. Because that's the moment identity is either reinforced or rewritten. When things go sideways, the average ask, why me? The disciplined ask, how do I respond like the person I've committed to becoming? It's never about perfection. It's about persistence with standards. And your standards aren't just about what you allow when things are good. They're what you uphold when things are bad. That's when they matter most. Anyone can claim a high standard in calm, but your true identity is revealed in chaos. And how you respond to it. That skipped workout. When the schedule collapsed. That's identity. That journaling session you skipped when emotions spiked. That's identity. That moment you numbed out instead of stepping up. That's identity too. But here's the good news. Identity can be reclaimed in real time. One decision, one rep, one standard honored in a moment when no one would blame you for folding. That's the reset. And the more you do that, the less you need to talk about who you are, because your consistency starts doing the talking for you. People can feel it. They'll notice the pattern, not the perfection, but the predictability in how you move. When it's hard, you don't check out. You don't lower the bar. You don't disappear. You adjust without apology. That doesn't mean you grind mindlessly. It means you maintain your non-negotiables, your time blocks, your food, your breath, your focus, your rituals, your language. You protect the minimums, because the minimums protect your identity. That's how you survive a rough week. And don't lose all your momentum. That's how you hit stress, and still build trust with yourself. That's how you take a hit, and still walk like you meant to take it. Because when discipline becomes identity, even your lowest days serve a purpose. They become proof. Proof that you don't just move when it's easy. You move because that's who you are now. This is where most people stop. Right here. When it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, unglamorous. When the hype wears off. When the energy dips. When the outcome still feels miles away. They slow down. Take the foot off the gas. Start negotiating with themselves. I'll get back on track Monday. But not you. Because now you understand. This moment counts more than all the easy ones combined. It's easy to move when it's light. It's easy to win when you're ahead. But discipline is built in the shadows. When no one's watching. And you've got every excuse to pause. That's when it counts. That's when you build the kind of internal power that can't be faked. That's when you earn the breakthroughs. The undisciplined will never touch. Because real growth isn't just stacking wins. It's continuing through the hard. When the emotions don't support it. When the feedback isn't there. When the conditions aren't perfect. You still move. You still show up. You still hold the line. And that decision, that one right there in the storm, is the one that changes everything. Because it's not just about what you achieve. It's about who you become by refusing to break when it would have been easy to do so. That version of you. They're not built in clarity. They're built in confusion, in friction, in the ugly middle when things don't make sense. But you choose forward anyway. And if you keep choosing that, every storm becomes strength. Every failure becomes fuel. Every hard season becomes the reason you walk into the next one with unshakable momentum. So don't slow down when it gets heavy. Lean in. This is where you prove it. To yourself. To your standard. To the future version of you watching right now. Hoping you don't quit. Because they need you to keep building. When it's hard, it counts more. Remember that. Live that. Be that. Because that's how legacies are built. That's how discipline becomes unbreakable. That's how you finish what you started. Even when it would have been easy.
Conclusion: discipline is freedom. Let's cut through the noise one last time. This isn't about motivation. This isn't about hacks. This isn't about being perfect. This is about who you decide to be every single day, with or without the spotlight. With or without the mood, with or without the world clapping for you. Discipline is the foundation, the structure, the armor and the engine. It's the thing that keeps you moving when the world tells you to slow down. It's the standard you set when others lower the bar. It's the line you hold, the mission you protect, the identity you express, even when no one's watching. And when you really lock into that, you don't feel trapped. You feel free. Because freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. Freedom comes from building the life that makes you proud. From stacking days that align with your highest self. From becoming so consistent in your values that chaos loses its grip on you. Discipline gives you that freedom. To choose with clarity. To act with purpose. To lead without fear. To move through resistance like it's part of the plan.